here?
Here.
Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Shemanek?
Here.
Mr. St. Marie is not. Mr. Vant?
Here.
Mr. Woods?
Here.
Chairman Tsai.
Here. I'm just going to recognize the meeting has been called to order. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I declare quorum present. I will now entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August 21st, 2017. I'll make that in a motion.
Second.
There's been a motion, a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. We have two public hearings scheduled tonight. All testimony will be given under oath. At the hearing, there will be an opportunity for the public to offer testimony and to comment. Following the public hearing, our deliberations will be open to the public in the sense that all are invited to listen and to watch. The public, however, may not speak during our deliberation. State statute requires a majority of the members of the Community Development Commission for those matters that will be referred to the City Council for approval and for those matters on which the Community Development Commission will make the final decision. Staff will provide a general description of the proposal followed by their analysis. Since one public hearing tonight on the agenda was proposed by the staff, once the staff presentation is completed, I will open for the public comment. Once public comment is open, you may give an opinion or present specific evidence why you believe the proposal meets or fails to meet the standards of the request. Whether you are a member of the public wishing to make a statement for the record or a witness testifying on behalf of the city or objector, you will be placed under oath and then begin by stating your name and address. If you are not presenting evidence on behalf of the city or objector, your remarks will be taken after staff presentation, and all those who have filed an appearance as an objector have presented all their evidence. You will be subject to question by the Community Development Commission and the applicant or objector to allow as many people as possible to be heard. If you're not an applicant or objector, we request your remarks be limited to 5 minutes. If additional time is needed, the hearing will be continued until the next available date. I will now call the matter before us this evening. The first item is case number 2017 CDC-07, is regard to a proposed map amendment rezoning. The subject property is located on Route 83, approximately 190 feet south of Royal Oaks Drive, commonly known as 5 North 104 Route 83, Bensville, Illinois. Gabriela Cervantes is the petitioner, and Gabriela Cervantes is the owner of the property. Will the secretary please note that the same commissioners are present? I declare a quorum present. Staff, please provide a summary of the request and indicate when notice of hearing was published and whether you have the certificate of publication from the newspaper.
Would you raise your right hand, state your name and address, please?
Mo Khan, 404 North Wooddale Road, Wooddale, Illinois.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Thank you, Commissioner Tsai. The public notice was published on September 28th, 2017 in the Daily Herald. The certificate of publication is on file. As also required, letters were sent to the required property owners, and a public hearing notice sign was posted on the property. The petitioner, Mrs. Gabriela Cervantes, is present at the hearing tonight. As the Commissioner Tsai stated, this is a map amendment rezoning for the property located 5 North 104 Route 83. It is highlighted by the yellow box right over here. The property is currently unincorporated. This rezoning request is pending if the property is annexed into the city of Wooddale. So once it's annexed into the city of Wooddale, it will be automatically zoned R1, and then upon annexation, the rezoning will be from R1 to R2. The property is currently has a single-story, single-family home on it with a detached garage, a deck, and in-ground pool over here in the back. This is a zoning map showing the current zoning of the adjacent Wooddale, incorporated Wooddale properties. As you can see, the majority of the properties here are zoned R2 except for a single property on Deer Path, zoned R1. Again, upon annexation, we automatically zoned R1. The request is to rezone it to R2 upon annexation. The comprehensive plan calls for this property in the future land use map as modern density single family. The use is currently a single family home, and that use would be continued upon annexation and the rezoning. So that would comply with the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. In terms of compliance with the UDO, the minimum R2 lot standards are listed right over here, with a minimum lot width of 80 feet, a minimum lot depth of 125 feet, and a minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. On the right-hand side, you see the dimensions of the subject property with a lot width of a little over 92 feet, almost 165 feet in lot depth, and a lot area of 15,144 square feet. So it meets minimum lot standards for R2 lot, and complies with the UDO. Because the request is consistent with the UDO and consistent with the comprehensive plan, staff is recommending the CDC to recommend approval for this request. And if there are any questions, I will happily answer them.
What's the reason for them annexing into the city?
As a part of the annexation agreement would be to request this rezoning to R2 so it prevents spot zoning. So as you can, well, the reason for the annexation request is to connect to city services, so they will connect to city water upon annexation, and the city sewer when it's nearby. Currently, city sewer is not close enough for them to connect and feasible to connect, so at that point it is for them. They will connect to city sewer as well. The rezoning is to prevent spot zoning.
So there isn't any water or sewer?
They can connect to water. There is water lines nearby for them to connect to. Unfortunately for city sewer, I believe it runs over here, so there's no easement for them to run the sewer from over here through private property, and no easement exists for that sewer line to be extended. So once the sewer line is extended to a point where they can connect to it, they'll be required to connect to it, and that'll be built into the annexation agreement.
Will that be in the pre-annexation agreement?
What was that?
Will that be in the annexation?
Yes.
So in other words, you'll still be on a septic then?
Yes.
Now, do we get any documentation from the county on the condition of the septic system?
We do not have that.
Now, what would happen if their septic system goes bad? I don't think they can repair it anymore.
I am not current with what the county's rule are on septic systems or septic fields, so unfortunately cannot. I would believe that they would have to connect to city sewer if they can't repair or install a new septic tank, septic field.
Excuse me, how close is the city sewer now?
The city sewer is, I believe, on the other side of the property over here off of Royal Oaks Drive, and I believe that's Lilac. They cannot connect to it because there's no easement or public way for the sewer line to be extended from that side. So without an easement or such, you would need to get that private property owner's permission approval to run sewer lines along the property and put an easement there. And that's something that's not unfortunately.
How is the water not on somebody else's property then too?
The water runs along 83. So there's a water line that runs along 83, so they can connect straight from 83. The sewer line, unfortunately, does not run along 83. It's on the other side of the other property that abuts it.
Well, would it be available to install it on 83?
That we would have to look into. If it were to be run along 83 at that point, then they would be required to connect to it once it's in a feasible location.
Because we got a lot of these problems with other residents with partial connection.
So this would be built into the annexation agreement stating when it's within a certain amount of footage, they would have to connect to it. So it's not whenever they would like to, there will be a requirement to when they would have to connect.
Yeah, but see, that's a problem that the city of Woodale has here. Everybody comes in, they cry and say, well, my well is bad, my well is bad. And they get the city water, and then they're still running a septic field, So if we can lock this thing in there really, really tight, once the sewer is available, they got 60 days or 30 days to hook up or something. We have to be a little bit restrictive on this rather than go months and months and years. Where these people say, well, I can't do it, my septic system is working fine. And, I don't want to have this commission put the city in a trick bag and say, okay, now we gave the people the water and they're not hooking up to the sewer, what are you going to do about it?
Kelly?
Oh, Kelly.
If I could offer some clarification, our code actually does require that if a property is within 200 feet of a public sewer line, then they are required to connect. However, in this instance, there's no way for them to connect. The homeowner did look at trying to obtain easements from those adjacent property owners, and they were not willing to grant easements for them to connect. In that way, I've had discussions with the Public Works Director about the sewer line, and this is a project that they're going to have to build into the capital improvement project in order to get sewer along 83. And there's other properties that they'll need to take into account. Now, as far as the annexation agreement, the City Council does have the ability, if they so choose, to require connection within a certain amount of time. And so that's something that, the City Council can consider. But as far as the rezoning, the connection to water and sewer isn't really part of the rezoning request. So we can certainly note that in the comments, but it's not relative to the rezoning standards.
Well, I excuse me, I understand that, but just the fact that I want to get all the loose ends all tied up so we don't have a problem. Any other questions from the board? George?
I walked the property this morning because it wasn't raining. 502 Royal Oaks Drive has city water. There's a Buffalo box on Royal Oaks Drive on the north side of that lot. Where his sewer goes out, I don't know, but I would consider it goes into Royal Oaks Drive. I would think. I didn't have but if he could come down 83 and connect to the water, I'm sure he could go in the same area and connect for sewer, and you wouldn't have to cut through somebody else's yard to get to the sewer or water. Go ahead, Paul.
It exceeds the distance that,
I'm sorry.
it exceeds the distance required from where the existing sewer is located. It's on the north side of Royal Oaks Drive, and that exceeds the distance for what triggers the requirement to connect to city sewer.
Okay, so
Which is why I've been talking with the Public Works Director to see how we can perhaps make that connection to then require connection for those other properties when they
Coming
annex.
down 83.
Correct. Right. Or,
To me, it's the most logical place to do it, but, oh my.
What advantage would it be to the city of Wooddale to do it? Is there that much revenue involved?
as far as extending the sewer line, because there's other properties on Deer Path that do not have sewer. So it would be looping that connection and looking at, lift station requirements and things like that. Which is why Public Works has been involved, and we started the conversation about what needs to happen in this area in order for the rest of those properties to be able to annex and be on all city services.
But that is Bensonville, that is not Wooddale.
It is actually unincorporated. It is Bensonville as far as the post office is concerned currently, but as soon as it annexes, then it becomes Wooddale officially.
Any other questions? Would the petitioner like to say something? Would you like, no? Go up to the podium, please. Is that on?
Would you
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
raise your right hand, state your name and address, please?
Gabriela Cervantes, 5 North 104, Route 83, Bensonville, Illinois.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
I
truth,
do.
so help you God?
Yes, I do. I'm not the owner of the property, actually, my son is. And, we're renting the property from him. He don't live there. And, we like to get the services, from Wooddale for the water and the sewer. We would love to have the sewer too, But there is no way we can do that because we have spoke with our neighbors and they reject our proposal. And all we can do right now is, if you guys agree to do it, is the water. And eventually, because we don't like the water from the well. The well water stinks and I hate it. That's why we're doing this. And the septic tank, eventually, we're gonna have to get rid of it too. And I don't know, it's up to you. You let us do it, and I will appreciate it a
Does anybody
lot.
on the
Thank you.
commission have any questions for the petitioner?
Yeah. Would you be willing to bring the sewer within 200 feet?
Like, what do
So
you
you'd be
mean?
required to?
It's a code requirement. Whether or not she's willing to is a different story, but we would require it.
Well, I'm
So
just
it's
saying
sort
if
of
she'd make
required.
up the difference between where it's at and the 200 feet. And then she'd be required to do it the rest of the way.
So are you suggesting that the city cover sort of whatever that excess amount of distance is, and then she cover that 200 feet? Is that what you're asking?
Right.
Yes, I will do it.
Is there any other questions?
I do, but
Mr. Woods, do you have any questions?
I'm not sure they understand exactly what it would cost to do that 200 feet. I mean, this is not just a few dollars they would be talking about, just so you know.
I know they had said something about $20,000 or something like that.
I think it'd be more than that, wouldn't it?
Well, I think the 20,000 was from the existing location on the north side of Royal
Yes.
Oaks Drive, straight down to their property. So it could be less because that exceeds the 200 feet that's required for connection.
Just so they understand what they're getting into, so. all right.
so if they,
Right.
so if they pay for it to come from the north side of Royal Oaks to their property, They pay for it. They own it. The guy next door on the south side at 5 North 080, he wants to annex, he wants to tap into her sewer line. Does she charge him?
Well, that's a whole recapture, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, if,
You know, I mean, this is all hypothetical. You know,
So-
what does the code say? Do they have to tap into the water and sewer if we annex them into Wooddale? Do they have 1 year, 5 years, 20 years?
there's no maximum amount of time. It
There's no
really has to
time.
do with the availability of that
So
service.
If we vote to annex them in,
Well, you're not voting on the annexation here.
I understand.
Okay.
To go to the council. So if I vote
Well, this
yes
is,
on this.
but this is specifically for rezoning. The annexation component is handled strictly by the council.
For rezone.
Yes. So whether or not it
You
meets the
guys can
standards
worry-
for rezoning.
You guys can worry about this down the line.
Well, ultimately, any property that currently is within the Wooddale city limits, if they're on septic, then, and there's no availability for sewer, they're going to remain on septic until such time as a sewer line is installed within the 200 feet. And then they would be required to comply. So this is no different than any other property that doesn't have sewer availability.
George, just to give some more clarity from a legal perspective, those sorts of issues can be dealt with in a pre-annexation agreement. That's not something that has to be resolved here. Here, we're just looking at rezoning. Is this particular lot, would it be eligible for the rezoning that's been applied for? And staff has gone through the standards and has said it meets the standards, so.
Is there any further comments or questions?
Well, yeah, I have a comment.
But
By amending this, or granting them the rezoning, I think all we're doing is opening up a can of worms. I'm part of a recapture agreement myself. It's been 22 years. Matter of fact, it's been 35 years, and I've never collected my recapture agreement. The city council keeps turning it down. They won't enforce it. And my neighbors on my block end up with the sewer, and they don't have to take the water. So I don't get my recapture agreement. I think it's grossly unfair to the people that paid for the sewers to be put in. I put in 450 feet of sewers and fire hydrants and water, and they're 80, to probably 50 feet from a buffalo box, and they won't connect because they have water. They have a well. So now it's 30-some years, and I can't collect my initial payment that I put down. Everybody else on the block has got water because of me.
Kelly?
So just to reiterate, that this property does have access to water, and so they would be tapping onto the existing water main. As far as sewer, that is something that, in terms of recapture, I know that it was mentioned here, but that's not necessarily what's going to happen in this situation. They're not close enough to be required to connect to city sewer because it's not available. And so I just want to be very clear that this isn't about recapture. This isn't about necessarily connecting to city sewer services. It's about whether or not the lot meets the criteria for granting or recommending approval of a rezoning.
Right. But I think you got enough information and concerns of this commission to forward our concerns to the city council.
Absolutely.
And we have our legal counsel here. I don't know whether, he'll be working on that annexation agreement, or I know his firm will be, so. But I just don't want to get in a situation where, the situation like Rich has got here is the fact that everybody took advantage of them for the water, and they say, well, I'm not gonna do anything else, so I don't have to pay you, So now he's sitting out with some big bucks, So, is there any other comment?
I got one here.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about here. They're willing to take that risk. All they're asking for us to do is to do a rezoning.
That's right.
So, I mean, it's not like they're doing any kind of recapture and they know what's going on with it. I don't see a problem with it, to me.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no additional testimony, I will now close the public hearing for case number 2007 CDC-07. Now, we don't have any more discussion on this, on 5 North 104 Route 83. Okay, I'll make a motion, based on the submitted petition and the testimony presented, the proposed map amending rezoning to R2 is consistent with the UDO and the comprehensive plan, and therefore I move that the Community Development Commission adopt the findings of fact included in the staff memo as findings of the Community Development Commission, and I recommend it to the City Council to approve case number 2017 CDC-02. That's my motion.
07.
07.
We have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Jamasco?
Marilyn,
Wait a minute.
excuse me. We have a
Is there any
discussion
other
piece.
discussion?
Oh,
Hearing none. Okay.
okay. Mr. Damasco?
For.
Yes. Mr. Peterson?
No,
Mr. Shamanik?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Woods?
Yes.
Chairman Saya?
Yes. The motion is to recommend approval of the variation request for 5 North 104 Route 83 carries. Next is case number 2017 CDC-08 in regard to proposed text amendments to Chapter 19 of the Municipal Code. The purpose of the text amendment is to add and revise definitions to Section 17.103.c, revise Section 17.204 regarding the Community Development Commission to reference the relocation content of Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code, clarified for relief from the stormwater and floodplain management regulations in Article 8, clarify some home-based business regulations in Section 17.604, clarify and reorganize the regulations regarding outdoor storage, trash collection, and loading areas in Section 17.502A and Section 17.606C, and to clarify and revise the regulations regarding landscaping and tree preservation regulations in 17.606. The Secretary, please note that the same commissioners are here. I declare a quorum present. Staff, please provide a summary of the request and indicate notice of the hearing was published and whether you have the certificate of publication from the newspaper.
We just raise your right hand, state your name and address, please.
Mount Con, 404 North Wooddale Road, Wooddale, Illinois.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Commissioner Sy. The public notice was published on September 28th, 2017 in the Daily Herald, and the certificate of publication is on file. As Commissioner Sy stated, city staff is proposing multiple text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance, or as more commonly known as the UDO. The first proposed text amendment is to the definition sections in the UDO found in section 17.103.c. The text amendments to remove and add definitions in regards to landscaping and trees, business uses, and public property. So then define various terms in reference to those three topics. Exhibit A and Exhibit B of the staff memo goes into more details, exactly what definitions are being revised, added, or removed. Exhibit B is specifically the proposed text amendment to Chapter 6, which is part of what is going to be the comprehensive tree ordinance regarding public and private trees. So that's why it was included, because some of the definitions in Chapter 17 are going to be referring to definitions in Chapter 6 to avoid duplication or definitions that don't match throughout the code. Second set of text amendments is regarding the Community Development Commission, and which will be moved to Chapter 3 in line with the other commissions and committees of the city. So it's going to be more organized correctly and kind of be consistent with the rest of the code. So it's to move the establishment and the duties of pertaining to the CDC to Chapter 3, where the other commissions and committees are located in the city code. And again, the staff memo includes a red line version of the proposed amendments. The third set is the amendments to the stormwater ordinance in Article 8 of the UDO. The reason why these were brought forward was to clarify that the CDC is a hearing body of the stormwater ordinance. The CDC was already put in place of the hearing body for Chapter 17, which includes the stormwater ordinance. This is just clarifying it so there's no confusion about that. As we were going through the stormwater ordinance and cleaning that up, we found there was other generic terms that were being referred to that weren't clear as what person or body, a governmental body they were referring to. So as part of the kind of clarify everything, staff made more changes that clarify the person and or governmental body, which is responsible for the administration, enforcement, and implementation of the stormwater ordinance. The stormwater ordinance has this term, the oversight committee, throughout the whole ordinance, and the oversight committee is not an established governmental body of the city of Wooddale. So when it refers to it, you don't really know who it was referring to. And as staff went through every section that said oversight committee actually referred to different bodies, so that could include the CDC, City Council, City Engineer, the DuPage County Stormwater Board. So it wasn't consistent as to who it was referring to. So the post-text amendment replaces that generic term oversight committee with a specific person and or governmental body. The other one more notable change is we replaced the term stormwater committee with the term DuPage County Stormwater Management Planning Committee. The city of Wooddale does have an established stormwater committee, but in the stormwater ordinance, that's not what it's referring to. It's actually referring to the DuPage County Stormwater Management Planning Committee. So that change was again made to avoid any confusion with our own stormwater committee here at the city. And those specific individuals that we identified were like the city engineer, development administrator, city council, DuPage Economic Development Department, and so forth. Again, those specific changes are in the staff memo in the red line version. The third set of text amendments brought forward here tonight are regarding home-based business regulations. All of these are meant to clarify the existing regulations and requirements of home-based businesses. The one that wasn't clearly stated, but the intent of the code was to state that the owner or operator of the business should be the full-time resident of that residential property. currently the way the code is written now, it confuses, whereas a person can just own a residential property and operate a business out of it without living there. And that's not what the intent of the code was. So this clarifies the intent and how the city's been interpreting that. The second is, again, a clarification of existing code regulation in the performance standards, saying that no heavy equipment can be stored on site, and commercial vehicles that are stored must be stored in accordance with section 17.608, which is not being proposed to be changed. That's an existing regulation. It's just being referred to it to clarify what those regulations are for storing commercial vehicle on site. And then we also clarified the list of prohibited home businesses. They were in two different sections, in the performance standards and the list of prohibited home-based businesses. So we kind of moved them from where they were listed in performance standards to the list, so it's consistent and clear exactly what businesses are not allowed to be home-based businesses. So which would be wholesale and retail businesses except residential short-term sales, and I'll get back to the first one after the whole list. Automotive and motor vehicle services, which replace motor vehicle body shop, so this is a more inclusive term, which is meant to be that way. And then building construction services. This seems to be a new type of business that's prohibited, but if you read the performance standards, this type of business is already not allowed because it wouldn't meet the performance standards of a home-based business, such as you can't store materials on site, you can't, materials on site is a big one. Again, the heavy equipment, no commercial vehicles except in accordance with that one section are not allowed. So this just clarifies that this type of business isn't allowed, and which is aligned with the performance standards already. If I can get through, I'll answer the question. Just back to the first one, the wholesale retail business. Residential short-term sales is basically just a fancier word for garage sales. People can continue to have garage sales. And the other thing is, inadvertently, a section of the code which allowed for internet and online sales was omitted or redlined out, saying that so it wouldn't be allowed. That was an inadvertent omission. It should be allowed. So online sales that are done through like USPS or FedEx or UPS can be done. Retail business is more supposed to be like a retail storefront, so you can't operate like a storefront out of your home and have people come up and buy. But if you're doing all through online, that's allowed. And we would ask the commission in the recommendation to add that back into it as a condition of the recommending the approval. So, because those types of businesses meet the performance standards and are not what we meant by retail businesses. The fourth set is regarding outdoor storage and refuse collection and loading areas. Again, this is reorganization of existing code to kind of group them together so you're not moving to multiple code sections to find out requirements for one thing. So it's reorganized the text to clarify the specific regulations for outdoor storage, refuse collection, or garbage or trash dumpsters, and loading areas. It limits the location of the storage, refuse collection, loading areas to the rear or side yards, unless it's approved by the development administrator. That's again an existing regulation, just clearly stated, so there's no confusion. Clarifies that landscaping is required unless it's practical, and that it refers to the landscaping code section where what states landscaping requirements. Clarifies enclosures must be a solid wall, or if it's a fence, it's constructed of a decay-resistant wood. That specific section regarding resistant wood was in the landscaping code, which didn't make sense, so we moved it to where it would make sense in the enclosure area section. And then we clarified that shared refuse containers and/or enclosures are allowed and encouraged. So if you have two different commercial properties and they want to build one common enclosure, we would encourage that, because then there's less enclosures, it groups them together so less unsightly dumpsters out there. The final set of text amendments are regarding tree preservation and landscaping regulations. The biggest changes is in the current code, residential properties with residential structures on them are exempt from the tree preservation and replacement requirements. This changes it to that if you have a property with a residential structure on their residential use, in the tree it has 15-inch diameter breast height. And you cut that tree down so it's 15 inches or more, it would require the tree preservation replacement requirements to be triggered, and you would have to follow them even as a residential property. The reason why we're requiring that is that a tree with a 15-inch diameter is about, I believe, 30 to 35 years of growth, which is substantial. And in order to kind of preserve our tree canopy and kind of preserve our namesake as Wooddale, we don't want residents just start clear cutting these established good trees and then kind of ruining the tree canopy. So this is a way to kind of make sure that if they do have to cut it down, then they're replacing these trees with ones that will grow back, throughout the years. Landscape plan will only be required when 5 or more replacement trees are required, and that's only if no other landscaping is part of the project. So if it's just replacement trees, and if they only have to put 4 or less, then they don't have to do a whole landscaping plan. So this is more for residential property, so they don't have to go through the whole landscape plan process. If they only have to put 1 or 2 replacement trees, it would be too much of a burden to put on residential owners, and it would be an undue burden. Right now, the code doesn't clearly state it just states that when you remove a tree, the tree replacement requirements are triggered. So technically, when you are transplanting a tree, you are removing it, but you're putting that tree back in the ground. So this clearly states that if you're transplanting a tree on site, it won't trigger the tree replacement requirements. The current code has specific trees which are prohibited and allowed to be planted. And we think that's, especially when you're listing trees that have to be planted, that's really restrictive, and it doesn't actually help when you're trying to get a wide variety of tree species planted throughout the town. So, because if you have a small sample of tree and a disease comes, in for a tree, it could wipe out a large portion of our tree canopy. So by just limiting it to saying that you can't plant certain trees, it'll offer a wide variety of tree species, and which is actually better for community. And then it allows for a wide variety of tree species type by removing the specific types of trees that should be planted on a property. The next change is that trees which are required to be planted by code are exempt from replacement requirements if they're going to be replanted as part of the development. So currently, our code requires parking landscape island to have a tree planted in that as a code requirement. So we're saying if as part of a redevelopment or development that you're taking out that one tree and you're going to put that same tree back, it might be in a different location, but if you're putting the same amount of trees back, then you're exempt from it. But if you're not going to put the same amount, then those additional trees would be subject to the tree replacement provision. There's multiple tree preservation landscape standards as well as design criteria in the current landscape code. Those are being all moved to a newly created section 17.606D to kind of combine them. And the reason why we're combining them now, city staff is working with a consulting service to come up with various standards, whether that be engineering, landscaping, and various other standards, which will be adopted, I believe, by the city council. So when those come forward, these standards will be removed and will be referred to that standard document. The last change, I believe, is this 20% deviation is allowed from the entire section, not just specific requirements. So right now, this current code allows 20% of each specific requirement to be deviated if approved by the development administrator, if there's reason. This is changing it up a bit to say 20% of the whole landscape plan can be deviated from if approved by the development administrator, and if there's reason to allow for that deviation. That's the last one. All the proposed text amendments the city staff is bringing forward are consistent with the UDO and consistent with the comprehensive plan. They meet the intent of the UDO and stay in line with what the comprehensive plan states. So we are recommending CDC recommend approval for the proposed text amendments. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. And on Exhibit B, under definitions, right-of-way. Now, on the north side of town where I live, on the back end of our lots, we have a sewer line running down. We've always called it an easement, but according to this would be called a right-of-way then. No?
No, it actually says in no case shall a right-of-way be construed to mean an easement, but it's not it's for use for transportation. So an easement is still an easement, and a right-of-way is, it can contain public utilities, right? So it, necessary public utility, but it doesn't necessarily refer to an easement. I should also note that Exhibit B is actually not part, it was included in the packet as reference, but it's actually not part of the public hearing. And so we certainly can take comments, I guess, if you know.
Yeah, well, I was kind of, interested in that one there because, you know, that part is got the sewer lines down there, so, and if it's, according to this, it's not called an easement then, right?
No, it would still be an easement,
Oh,
right.
oh, okay. Okay, and the other thing is, on the stormwater, are we taking some of the thunder away from our stormwater commission or committee? Go ahead.
Absolutely not. So to give a little background on the stormwater ordinance, DuPage County has their own stormwater ordinance, which we are required to follow. However, we adopted our own ordinance because we are a complete waiver community, which means that we have the authority to administer the code. And so as part of that, we did make some amendments. The problem when we adopted this ordinance is that we adopted the same language that was in the county ordinance without relating it to specific entities within our own community. So there was issues with terminology where the county ordinance says oversight committee and it says committee, but that committee meant to the DuPage County Stormwater Management Planning Committee. And so what we did with this is tried to clean up the language to better match what the intention is relative to the DuPage County ordinance, and then also specifically what that means within our community. So the Stormwater Committee was never responsible for administering this ordinance. It was actually the responsibility of the Community Development Commission, and we are not changing that. We are simply clarifying the roles of who's to do what, because there was that disconnect between the county terminology and what we have in our own community.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing on the tree ordinance, I think you've got everything pretty well covered there. And I talked to Kelly earlier today, and I still have a few problems with the home-based businesses, but I think it's just my way of thinking, you know. It's the fact that if a guy, say a guy plows snow, and he's done for the day, and he needs his truck to go into the city, and he dumps his plow in the driveway, according to what's in here, is the fact that he'd be in violation because he's showing part of his business out.
So not necessarily. So what we're doing is we're referencing any commercial vehicle will still be allowed to be stored and parked in accordance with the existing code that allows that. So we're basically saying that, you know, it does mention that there's no, let's find the language here. No evidence, exterior evidence of a home-based business. However, that's really intended more for like the signage in terms of your activity and level of activity. That's really what that's intended for. The storage of commercial vehicles is still allowed pursuant to the existing code sections. We're not proposing any change to that. So, you know, the uses, and I think that's really where we offered the clarification of the uses or the prohibited uses. That's really to help clarify the no exterior evidence that's being, that's currently in our code.
Yeah, because the way I was thinking is the fact that the cement guy comes home from work, he's got his wheelbarrows, he's got his forms on his truck, you know, he's got it parked in the driveway. And, well, there's evidence that, you know, this guy you know, this guy's got a business there, you know, so he'd be in violation, you know.
Well, I guess the same could be true of somebody who doesn't have a home-based business, though. So we would be treating it the same as if it were, you know, a foreman on a construction job where he's not running it out of his own business, or out of his own home, but rather that he brings his commercial vehicle home, and so that would be what we would use. And I think that's where we've clarified here, is that the commercial vehicles, you know, can be allowed, but in accordance with that other section. And so that's what we were trying to clarify.
Yeah, because we've got a lot of people that are service people, you know, that bring home a company truck or, you know, and have it in their driveway. It's just the fact that, you have a plumbing problem at 9 o'clock at night, and you call the plumber up, and he's got his truck, so he goes, you know. And that was my only concerns. I'm kind of tying up the board here. Any other questions? Mr. Woods?
In regards to the trees, Kelly, the 15 inches or larger, I mean, through Wooddale, we have tons and tons of trees that are just dying. So you're gonna get homeowners that are gonna be stuck for all of that all at one time?
So if it's a dead or diseased or nuisance tree, then the replacement requirements are 1-for-1. But if it's 15 inches or greater, they would be required to replace it. If it's smaller than that, there would be no replacement requirement, meaning that they could chop that down and there would be, now I will clarify that it has to be a single family, a two-family, or a duplex. There has to be those types of structures located on the property. So this doesn't apply to vacant lots, and currently doesn't apply to vacant lots. So any vacant lot that has trees in excess of the 6 inches has to meet the tree preservation requirements. And so we're not proposing a change to that. We are simply saying that, you know, residential properties do have some really mature trees that contribute greatly to our tree canopy within the community, and think that there is some value with trying to encourage property owners to retain those trees. Now, again, though, if it's diseased or damaged and dead, then there's provisions in there to lessen the amount of replacement trees that would be required.
Okay.
Could you clarify, does the city require diseased and dead trees to be removed on private property or not?
I'm glad you asked that question. So as part of all of our review of the landscaping provisions, we've actually worked very closely with Public Works to revise a couple sections or propose amendments to a couple sections in the in Chapter 6 of our code. And so part of that is looking at right-of-way trees as well as nuisance greenery. And so what we're doing is we're compiling, along with our landscaping regulations, we're going to package this all together for the City Council to consider amendments to nuisance greenery, which would be essentially, I forget the exact definition, but it's essentially neglect of maintenance. And so then there's other provisions that would allow the city to take action on those types of nuisances on private property in accordance with state law. State law actually provides for that currently, so we're just updating our code to sort of make sure that they're not conflicting with one another.
Do you think that will be addressed soon?
It's planned to go to city, this whole package of amendments is planned to go to City Council, I believe, on November 9th. It's going to be a very busy November 9th meeting.
There's several large trees in Ward 1 that are dead. And some of these properties not only are neglected, but probably vacant also. And it's pretty unsightly and probably dangerous too to have these trees standing. A windstorm or something, they're big trees. They could hurt somebody, kill them.
That's why
No problem at all.
Absolutely. That's why we've been looking at this, is trying to be able to comprehensively look at our landscaping and tree requirements. And
Just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I ask you a quick question? The enforcement end of this, who enforces this?
Community development would. So when a redevelopment or development occurs as part of the site plan review, we would look at the landscaping requirements in terms of if it's a nuisance, so a dead tree, a diseased tree, something like that. That would also be handled by the code enforcement department. or community development by a code enforcement officer, also along with our arborist and public works department, because unfortunately we don't have certification or training to identify what could potentially be a dead or a diseased tree. But we do have an arborist on staff in the public works department. So in those cases with a dead or diseased tree, we would work closely with them to identify if it's potentially dead or diseased.
So if I wanted to take a tree down on my property, I could take it down, but then somebody's going to tell me that I need to put another tree up. Is that what you're stating?
So the way the code is states, if you have a tree on your property at your home and it's 15 inches or more in diameter, you would have to first come to the city of Wooddale to get permission. Just like if you're gonna build an addition, a shed, you would have to come to the city to get a permit for it. So same thing that would apply. You would have to get a tree removal permit to do it. Now, is that to say, people will cut them down without getting? We can't enforce everybody. We can't prevent actions from happening all the time. But they will be required to come in for a tree removal permit before cutting the tree down.
Okay.
15 inches or greater.
But then on the tree preservation plan, the arborist comes down and can say what things to cut on what parkway trees, and they don't listen to the resident?
So
No, they've got.
these proposed text amendments are
Right. The arborist can,
not for parkway trees.
no, for parkway trees, the arborist tells them, if it's on the parkway, they'll tell Public Works what ones they can trim, and supposedly a certified arborist tells them how to trim it, or they've been trained, because they come down our street and they've cut everything in Ward 4 last year, regardless of talking to the residents or anything else. So I'm just trying to understand what the limits and the bounds of this situation is, whether it be on a parkway. I understand private property, they can't do it, correct?
The city can't do it.
The city can't do it, but they can make you take it down by this ordinance?
So the ordinance that we're proposing, or the amendments that we're proposing, does not require removal of a tree. The ordinance that we're proposing actually encourages retention or preservation of those trees. And so I think what you're referring to is the nuisance ordinance, which is not something that's part of this. I just mentioned it for the simple fact that we're evaluating all of it comprehensively to then take to the city council, but it's not in the UDO. So it doesn't require a public hearing before it can be amended by the city council.
Okay, so say in this instance, I have a 30-foot oak tree. I'm sorry. I have a 60-foot oak tree that is 30 feet round, or more than 30 inches round, or in diameter. It get hit by lightning. I have to cut it down. I then have to put 5 trees on my property for that one oak tree?
No. So there's a provision in the current code, it's not being changed. So if it's a dead, disease, or dying tree, or damage to a point where it would become a cause for safety or concern for safety, it would be a 1-for-1 then. So you would only be required to plant 1 replacement tree. So a 1-for-1 ratio essentially.
And for some reason, if I don't, then do I get a ticket?
Enforcement action would then be taken at that. It may not necessarily be a ticket, but some type of enforcement action would be most likely taken.
Any other questions? Any more, Dave? I don't think you were satisfied with that answer.
You know, I get many answers from many different people in the city about trees. And after we took care of our street we've been there 25 years, somebody comes down and cuts a bunch of the trees up. So that's a certified arborist, which I'm sure wasn't in the truck when they were cutting those trees. I had my piece with communication with the city, but that's just my opinion on it. So preservation is one question. How preservation done is another question.
Yeah. You have any more, Rich? Okay. Any further questions? No additional testimony will be disposed in public comment can be provided after the public hearing. Having no additional testimony, I now close the public hearing for case number 2017 CDC-08. Do we have any further deliberations? There being no further discussion, is there a motion relative to the proposed text amendment for Chapter 17? Okay. Okay, based on the proposed text amendment to section 17.103C, section 17.204, 17.502A, section 17.604, section 1706, and to Article 8 of the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 17 of the Municipal Code, as summarized in the staff memo. I move that the Community Development Commission adopt the findings of fact included within the staff memo as the findings of the Community Development Commission, and to recommend the City Council to approve the case number 2017 CDC-08 with the suggested modified by staff to 17.601C concerning 604C concerning online internet sales and retail businesses, and recommend the City Council approve case number 2017 CDC 08. That's my motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Damasco?
Four.
Mr. Peterson?
No.
Mr. Shemenek?
No.
Mr. Vant?
Yes.
Mr. Woods?
Yes.
And Mr. Sy?
Yes. Okay, for the staff, I had talked with Mo a couple of weeks ago around getting an update of some of the decisions we made regarding some of the variations.
Just to cut some updates on some of the larger projects, and then the next meeting we'll hopefully have a more comprehensive list of past cases of 2016 and then also from 2017, but just some of the major ones that have come forward in front of the commission. 1500 Michael is in which the commission recommended approval for a height variation, is in the process of, they finished demolition and the grading and starting the construction of the shell of the building. 55 Middle is almost done with demolition, and we're in the process of reviewing their shell permit currently. And then 1235 Middle is also soon to start demolition on their building. The police and fire department were using it in the past few weeks for training purposes, and I believe they're almost finishing up, and so the demolition will start. They were nice enough to let our police department and fire district use that for training purposes, so demolition will start soon on that property.
And the big question going around the city is what's happening with the memory care center.
Well, the project continues, and I guess in terms of timeline, we've heard the timeline come and go, so I can't really say for sure when that project will be completed, but it does look promising. It is, pieces are starting to be completed, so we're hopeful that hopefully within the next couple of months, we will see more of a finished product out there. But really, it's a matter of, if they keep moving along with the way they are, we're hopeful by the end of the year that we'll have some occupancies granted for that, so.
Yeah, what kind of concerns me is some days you see, say, 15 or 20 trucks out there, and other days it's like Ghost City, So,
Mr. Stein,
yes,
I was in the building 2 weeks ago, and I talked to the general contractor and some of the contractors, and they're gonna wrap that building up by December 30th, not 31st, December 30th. I walked next door to the office where they have a little mock setup in there. They're already selling selling these suites or units or apartments or whatever. And they're saying that they'll be ready for occupancy on the 3rd of January. So, that's what I got.
thank you.
And the top 3 floors are done. They're obviously working, finishing, coming down. It's a 6-story. The top 3 are done. The 3rd floor is ready for the carpeting and everything. The biggest is gonna be the main floor. That's gonna be, because it's the highest, the entryway, and I tell you what, they're gonna wrap it up by the 1st of the year.
I do have one other announcement. We are having our second comprehensive plan open house on Thursday from 4 to 6:30 right next door at the former SBT building. It is an open house format, so please come whenever you can. We are also having some local restaurants provide some samples. So we're doing a little bit of a flavors of Wooddale. So you can come and try some of the different food available through some of our local restaurants, which is exciting all in and of itself. But please join us next door.
Can I ask one more question on the assisted living? Is that going to be licensed by the state under their care? Are they going for licensure skilled, assisted, SNF?
I don't know exactly what level they're going for. I'd have to look into that.
Okay, so they are, but they are
I
getting,
do believe so, yes. I believe that's the intention, so unless something has changed, I just don't know what level of care.
okay, so they have to go through those inspections in the state fire marshal also?
I do believe so, yeah.
Okay.
We'll check with them for next
Any
time.
more questions for them? With no further business, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's been a motion second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.